Oh yes, good point. Trish is not only a good bird, she is a listener. The third way is static. So the muscle can just stay contracted and hold your hand like this. So it can work by doing this, shortening. It can work by doing this, lengthening, or it can work hold still. So that's like a hold. And you know you can get fatigued when you're holding, and that's why the fatigue comes as the jumpy bit, and some of you are getting the fatigue in your adductors because they're trying to hold your knees up together, and the weight of your legs is pulling them down, and they're trying to hold your knees up, and they're getting tired and they're starting to jump because they don't know how to let go. I don't, you don't want them to necessarily, but they're getting really fatigued because they're holding your knees slightly up because gravity's pulling your knees out, and so they're slightly holding your knees up, so then the fatigue makes them jump a little bit. So that's a long story, but it's important to understand, not that we're going to do heaps of muscle analysis, but that you understand that sometimes what's happening in the joint doesn't predict which muscle is going to work. And that's why this position is really hard. He calls it an old-fashioned term, chronaxy. Timing, doesn't matter. Just if you read I'm just saying if you read the notes, just don't worry about that word, just don't worry about it. So come back onto your elbows. And find a way where, as much as possible with your soles of your feet together, you can let your chest sink more that way. Your shoulders can kind of come forward so that your head can find a position to be in neutral, resting on top of your shoulders, so that your neck muscles don't have to work to stop it from falling back. Now, for some people, their chests just don't let this happen, and it's just part of your biomechanics and whatever. So you just need to rest more, okay? But there's a reason why in this position you might find it a little bit harder at first to let your pelvis go into anterior tilt, so 12 o'clock, because your tummy muscles are so busy trying to stop your head falling off your shoulders. Okay, so go ahead and do the 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock business. Good, and see if you can put your tummy out a little bit more. That's it. Because actually, once you have learnt to let go of your tummy and just let your neck flexors look after your silly old head, actually, you've got more freedom of motion in this position than in lying. So you should get more. Your clock is bigger, mostly.
What is bigger?
Clock. Not that size matters. Not that size matters. And now try that movement where as your pelvis rolls forward, you roll with a kind of bias to the right so that your outside of your right knee goes more towards the floor. And you feel more of that arch in the left side of your trunk. Yeah.
I feel like I'm efforting to do that. Is that okay?
You will feel some power in your back. Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to the front.
Yes. If you're pulling back that hard for your tummy to feel really tight, it's probably not too much. But I don't think you need to be scared of feeling like your back is powerful. No, when you're arching forward, that there's that push forward. It shouldn't feel like a strain. It should feel like a positive thing. You know what I mean? Like, there are some lessons coming up which I always seem to cop, about probably beginning of second year or something, where you really have to access the power of your back. And it's very confronting because everyone thinks Feldenkrais is this gentle, la 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 la, floating la la la. And there's this stuff where you really harness your strength. You do strong movements. So you might as well practice them now. Now go to the left a few times if your neck can cope with it. So you're taking go back to 6 and then come to 12 and more to the left, outside of the left knee. And again, just, exaggerate your elbows behind you just to help support your head and neck.
So when when your chest drops down, just the back of your thoracic.
Yeah, it comes through your shoulder blades in a way, and then that allows your head to sink further forward on your neck, but in a funny kind of way. And so be clear, it's not just rolling left and right, it's going down. Down towards the knee. That's it. Good. And rest. Does gravity just have its way with you, Joel? Just so quickly. It's like, oops, I felt gravity. Down I go. Good. Rest. Have a long rest. And if your neck is, the front of your throat or your abdominal muscles feeling a bit tweaky, just roll your head very gently just to release any kind of residual tension. It's a bit like just saying, sorry, loves. Sorry I worked you so hard. It will get easier. Shoulders in your pecs, was it? Yeah. So just go very, just when I ask you to do something, you just do one or two. And then you can imagine it. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Take this opportunity to breathe. You won't be able to breathe for the next 5 minutes, so gasp it in. No, that's a joke. You're not going to gasp it in. There is always air, plentifully supplied. Come back up onto your elbows and the soles of your feet together. And notice, that it helps with your chin tucked in more and the sort of the crown of your head going more towards the ceiling. But now I'm going to ask you to just do that little clock thing with your head where you take your head back a little bit. So you are looking up. So you feel that work. Your flexors lowering your head backwards and then pulling them forwards. But allow the movement to grow so that your chest can actually support the backward movement. Because that's it. So your sternum can come forward. And you can get that idea of the top part of the C curve. That's it. And then as your sternum comes forward, your belly wants to come forward. And then you notice that also happens to allow your pelvis to roll more towards 12. So your chin goes towards the ceiling and your pelvis rolls forward towards the floor. And that somehow or other, by combining the two ends, it does maybe take a little bit of the pressure off the front of your neck, because you're now starting to get the middle of you supporting that movement a little bit more. Just slowly. And it's a working towards proposition. It's not, it'd be so boring if you got it straight up. Like Trish is just so bored because her head's comfortable in this position, aren't you? You're just bored witless. There's nothing to learn. It's just tedious. You just want to go home. No. Oh.
Yes and no.
Yeah. You guys are so cheeky. Good. Okay. Leave it and rest for a bit. Rest. Good. And because this was a mini pause, it was just to give your head some respite. Come back up into that position. You learn to rest really quickly and efficiently in ATM. You do, isn't it? Like how much rest do you need? You don't need much. It's just, if you really rest efficiently, you don't need much rest. So, your soles of your feet together. Now this time, lean on your right elbow and your left hand. So your left elbow is straight. Yeah, so it's asymmetrical. We love these asymmetries. So find out how your left hand is behind you. So see, I'm just being sneaky and giving you it's half of the ATM from yesterday and half of the ATM from today. And now try and take your pelvis 12 to 6. In this asymmetry, so your spine is twisted, but it's twisted from the top now. And is your head free to move? Is your sternum free to move? Is your belly free to come forward? You can take your head back as much as you want to, just to support. Remember how that really supported the movement of the pelvis? Struggle beautifully. That's it. You need to laugh, because this is, otherwise if your tummy holds on, this is torture. Good. Rest moment, and then of course you're going to do it on the other side. So some of the sleep centre at my uni did a study years ago on what is a refreshing rest, like a sleep, and not in the context of Feldenkrais, but in context of, you know, a nap, a day nap. And do you know how many minutes is the most refreshing sleep for a day nap?
5 minutes.
10. 3, 5, 15. I went 10. They say 10. So they might have been disproven, I don't know, but 10 was what they came up with. And how they looked at it was that they gave people like cognitive tests, tests of memory and attention and whatnot, before, and then they allowed them to sleep in these different time periods. And 10 was the most refreshing. Sorry?
Sleep qualifies as sleeping or just having your eyes closed?
They had gone into first stage non-REM sleep. Yeah.
And they got woken up by something? Or?
Yeah. And one of the reasons is a short nap is better is you don't go into REM sleep, which is much, and even stage 4 non-REM sleep. When you get woken from stage 3, 4 or REM sleep, you are really asleep, and it takes a while for you to rouse out of it. Whereas if you have a 10-minute sleep, you stay in stage 1 or 2, when you're roused out of it, it's not such such an effort, so you're cognitively more alert when you wake up. Stage 1, stage 2 is also characterised by the thing that you don't feel like you've been asleep, but you actually are asleep.
When I was teaching in Japan, we used to have English lessons, 40
Yeah.
minutes with 5-minute breaks.
Yeah.
Basically, everyone learned to actually sleep in 5-minute slots.
Yeah.
The 6 months I was there, you would sleep in 40 minutes. I'd go home
Yeah.
and sleep for 40 minutes and wake up every 40 minutes.
Oh, right.
Because all your breaks were 40 minutes.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
had a
so you
lunch
just-
break,
yeah,
an
yeah,
afternoon
yeah,
break, 40
yeah.
minutes, and then you had 5 minutes. So you worked 12, 13-hour days. So
Oh, God, they're mad.
that was good money, though.
Yeah, well, you learnt it, don't you? Yeah. Come back up onto your left elbow and your right hand.
So your pelvis has to be straight and your chin is twisted.
Yeah, your chest is twisted, and then you try and let your pelvis find some kind of equanimity on the floor, and now find a way to do your 6 to 12 in this position. As straight as you can. You can't, you're not straight, so it's not going to be straight. But how do you adapt? Now, the reason some of these lessons are so amazing is because he introduces these constraints, and what it forces your brain to do is problem solve using what is familiar and what is different. How do I adapt my situation for this constraint? How do I find a solution under these new circumstances? So isn't this resourcefulness? This is resourcefulness in action. How do I find another option? Can I make mistakes? Can I make linkages? Can I network? Can I find other options? Can I galvanise other resources? Can I still breathe? And let's hope the wind doesn't change. And it has the advantage of now come back onto both elbows and do the thing that before seemed really ridiculous, ridiculously hard. And for most people it will feel a bit easier. It's a bit like banging your head against the wall, and your head feels so good when it stops. But no, it's more than that. It's far more complicated than that. There's something about the learning. Try. A little bit easier. Because that constraint helped you find maybe some other options. It made you more resourceful. Really feel the rolling on the back of the sacrum. You can really push the coccyx into the ground and the pubic bone can come forward. Good. So the movement might feel tricky, but it looks really good. That's it. Okay, and leave it. Rest on your back. And sit up again, and this time lean on your hands behind you. Soles of your feet together. And roll your pelvis forwards to 12 o'clock and backwards to 6 o'clock. You can start off small, like a little wristwatch movement, and then go into a bigger clock. End up like Big Ben. Sitting on Big Ben. Well, Big Ben's the tower, isn't it? What's the clock called in Big Ben? Is it Big Ben? That's the way it works. I always get them confused.
Big Ben, Big Ben.
Big Ben is not in Big Ben. Something. How's the Parliament or something, isn't it? And then try the variation where the right knee goes more to the floor. And how's that today compared to yesterday? A little easier? And back to 6, and then over to the left knee, back to 6, over to the right knee, back to 6. Feeling your tummy scooting forward. That's it. Your sternum's free to come forward. Your head's free to go back a little bit. So as the weight goes more to the knee, your head goes back so that your sternum can come forward. There's something about the sternum coming forward and the head back that helps the knee get to the floor. Who knew? Feels a little bit counter, doesn't it? But see how the front of you can lengthen? That's it. So I don't know what you're feeling is different, but it looks very different to this time yesterday. Leave it and rest on your back for a moment. And roll up to sitting and lean on your elbows, soles of your feet together. Okay, now do go 12 to 6 a few times in this position, and then try the 6 to right knee pathway. And feel again that it's a diagonal, it's not a roll, it's a diagonal. And at the knee, you can, by pushing your belly forward, really arching your back and feeling the strength in your back, and that your head can go back and the front of you can lengthen, that knee can still go in the direction of the floor, the right knee and then the left knee, going back into 6 in between. That's it. Push your belly forward. That's it. And that somehow or other, by doing the movement, it relieves a little bit of that static fatigue in the front of the neck. That's it. And leave it and rest. Rest on your back. Beautiful. And how are you lying on the floor now with this variation? So we've put in a different orientation, being on your elbows, and then we've had a variation within that different orientation, which is, you know, an asymmetrical constraint. And you've had to adapt to it. So there are this similarities thing, so you've got some information from the previous lessons that will help you, but you have to adapt it. And adaptation is one of the most fantastic things that our system does. It takes in this information, it resorts it, it figures out what is useful from the old information, it gets rid of the information that's not relevant anymore, brings in new information, reconfigures things, and that's what adaptation is. And without adaptation, you can't change environments. You can only live in one environment. Without adaptation, you could only eat one food. Without adaptation, you could only be in one position. You could only wear one set of shoes. You could only wear one kind of clothing. So it's adaptation that gives us choice, right? This idea of being able to adapt to different conditions and different contexts. If you didn't have adaptation, you would only be able to walk in a straight line, and you'd only be able to walk on the floor. You know, on the lino, for example, you wouldn't be able to walk on the carpet, or you wouldn't be able to walk on the grass. You wouldn't be able to go bushwalking. You wouldn't be able to walk in the wind. You wouldn't be able to walk uphill. You wouldn't be able to turn a corner. So this idea about learning and then adapting, and learning and adapting, this is what gives us flexible brains. And that's manifested in these flexible bodies that can adapt. So it's a very nice inbuilt feature of ATMs that trains us in this adaptation business. So you've checked in, hopefully, while I've been talking, how you're lying and how your pelvis is on the floor. Slowly roll over and come up to sitting. And then up into standing. Oh, bless you, you're going to go and do some more pelvic rolls. Good on you. Well, here's the good news, you don't have to. Well, actually, you will have to in a minute, but don't worry about that. And just stand for a minute. And if you were going to look down at your feet, just look down at your feet. You know, be interested, like you want to see them. Don't just look down because I tell you to, but have the intention that I want to see what my feet are doing and how that organises you. Where does your pelvis go to help you look at your feet? And then you really want to look up at the stars, because there might be, you know, a comet So how does your pelvis help organise for you to look up at the stars, and then how does it help you look down? And then don't let your pelvis help you. So just keep your chest and your pelvis frozen. It's a nasty thing to do. I'm a nasty person. Keep your chest still and your shoulders still, and just look up and down with your neck, moving your head through space. It just feels ludicrous now, right? But this is what most people do. You say look up and they'll do this. I have these clients that come in and say, I can't turn my head. And they turn and I said, show me. And they look over their shoulder and their shoulders stay absolutely still, and they go like that. And they say, look, I can't look over my shoulder. I go, well, why are you holding your shoulder so still? Well. And I go, why don't you just do that? You know, just hey? What's that? Go ahead. Sorry, am I being weird about my clients? Okay. Go ahead now, walk and look up and look down. You can tell me later. It was just funny. People are funny.
People do.
People are so funny. They are so funny.
Did you say that's the end of the session?
Yeah. Yeah, you're fixed. It's one of the hints in the 3-minute miracles. Is just show people that they've got a spine underneath their, thing.
When I was in Melbourne, I actually sounded like that in front of a mate of mine while we were playing golf. He said, I see you've still got your neck problem. Because I'd used my shoulder to turn, he figured I still had a stiff neck.
Yeah. And so this is really good. Yeah.
Yes, I wasn't holding it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Isn't that funny?
yeah.
So funny. We're so funny.
Because I said, when you're sitting in the GP, you want me to use my spine?
Yeah. Yep. It's not painted on, love. Okay, so while I try and get the Zoran's Apple thingy to play, I just want you to listen to Moshe talk about proximal distal and see what he does. But while I'm fiddling with that, because I don't want you to waste a minute of your time, find a partner. And, yesterday you had your hands on the top of their pelvis, so their iliac crests, and you went along for the ride. And then you had your hands on with a hand on their sacrum rolling forward and back. So they're doing the 12 to 6 in sitting, leaning on their hands. Today, you have permission to put your hand, with their permission, on their sternum, lightly on their head, but you've got to be very light, otherwise you'll inhibit them. And you go along for the ride on their head, on their sternum. Maybe you could put your hand on their collarbone. Or collarbone. You could put your hand in between their shoulder blades, on their shoulder blades, any of the things that we've talked about.
When they're walking.
Oh, sorry, no, sitting on the floor, leaning back on their hands, going 12 to 6. Sorry, yes.
I'll go first.
Oh, yes, okay, good. All right, let's see what I can...
Oh, yeah.
Right, no, that's okay.
Comfy. Okay. So I'm just starting. Try to cope it, because there always been a weakness of, well, not a weekness of, can't pigeonhole them, but it's a grey area. Oh, is it my neck?
No, it was my neck, not your neck.
My wife asked me the other day, like cracking of the neck is a good thing or a bad thing. I kind of just I was like, I don't really know how to answer that.
I don't know what it is.
Because some people really like cracking, like it's like she likes cracking her knuckles.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of think, oh my God, I couldn't stand it. Someone cracking my knuckles. Yeah.
They are like between.
Between the shoulder blades is always a bit the kind of first. I mean, it was missing yesterday. She's got funny waiting for his hand there. And then it just like kind of popped down.
Might not be on that fast, I don't know.
Something just kind of like dropped. Something just kind of hang on. There you go. My shoulder blades actually really good.
They're really good.
Scapula, they're really missing as well. Kind of picking out parts that I'm actually thought as your training is done.
Yeah.
Your chest can really open out.
Pardon?
Your chest is really opening out.
It's going
good.
That's really.
That's great.
Something soft, yeah, to say.
Yeah. Smart.
Anyone know how to get the sound out of this stupid MacBook onto something?
Just turn the sound up, just on the top row.
Yeah, it's turned up in the thing, but I'm not sure about probably not. Oh. Yeah, I shouldn't be careful about that.
Oh, there we go.
That's
Still quiet. Yes, 3 years, very soft, wrapped up to the max.
Well, I know people used to do that position. I went to it's easy for them.
Really soft.
Yeah, that was weird.
What was that?
Have you swapped over? Yeah. Yeah.
I have no idea, but yeah.
Now the big muscles, the big muscles of the belly.
Use mine.
Normally our legs and the pelvis retain the big mass pushes motionless, and so I can because they are heavy and long. When you do put the feet
Yes.
together,
They come into
the
a
belly,
speaker.
you do something
Oh, sorry, I see that.
which makes it possible to learning. Otherwise, if I didn't do that, you can.
Is it coming from the speaker? I can't hear you. Is that where the speaker is on that?
This time, we do that. We do that in our
We should all gather round. Why don't you listen and speak out loud what he's saying?
I'm going to do that. I've got these transcripts. But
Yeah.
all right. So let's do that. Now let's be quiet. How do we make the thing bigger?
Oh, just pull it, just drag it. Just put the little coin on the corner and drag it. The other corner, bottom corner. Drag it across.
See both hands going?
Yeah, just, oh, you've got a, yeah. Oh, is there a, is there a full screen sign now?
One of the buttons on top left, the laser icon, isn't it?
Click on it first.
Let's try one different thing. Let's try one more. That's right.
What about view? Pull down view to the screen.
That could be, that's not.
Hey, Dan will help you, Dan. You'll go. Dan, full screen. Dan, can you make full screen?
Yeah, it should be.
That one?
Well, I made that arm function the same evening, so that they phoned me yesterday and telling him that at home he felt even better than after the lesson here, and that he put on the jacket for the first time in the 6 months, not by putting it on the arm that he can't move and then putting the jacket.
The vote is that's big enough.
Little nerve, seriously.
I think we're cool. Yeah.
No, control F makes it go full screen. There we go.
Okay, this is what I want you to actually see.
Good
I
enough.
This time you do that. And we do that in our functional preparation. With substance.
Only a few days ago, I had somebody who had a ski accident 6 months ago, and he decapsulated his shoulder. That's what the surgeon in Boston told him. And for 6 months, he can't do anything with that arm. It's painful. And they say he's decapsulated. What that means, I don't know, but I can understand what they mean by that. But you can't leave the arm. Well, I made that arm function the same evening, so that they phoned me yesterday and telling him that at home he felt even better than after the lesson here, and that he put on the jacket for the first time in the 6 months, not by putting it on the arm that he can't move and then putting the jacket, but he put the jacket on the right arm and put the left arm behind and put it on. Now, how do you get to do that? Of course, you can do it in physiotherapy, but you see it didn't work with him. And he's a wealthy man. And he did everything. He went to surgeons, to them, and one didn't work. And how could we manage to do it? I did it, actually. How could I do it in about 40 minutes? You know what I did? I'll show you something. Would you come here, sit here a minute? Look, if you can't move that arm like that because it's decapsulated, then of course the muscle that lifts that turn a little bit so that the muscle that lifts, hold it. The muscle that lifts it is also pulling the body towards the arm. Because you can see, suppose that arm weighed 100 weight, resist. Look, can you see the head, the entire body goes here. That muscle does it. Now, therefore, can you see it? Now, it has now taken my weight, but it still holds that weight. Therefore, it moves enough to hold that weight. All right? Now, how can I make that move? If I take that arm like that here, that's the exact thing you can't do. You can't do that. Because I do that, if he could do that, why would he come here? If he could lift the arm and do that with it, why would he come? He can't do that. He can't do that. He can't put the arm behind. It's just like killing him. The pain is so great that he can't do it. So he keeps it motionless. Now, if I come down, if I were a good physiotherapist, I would do something about it. Say, ooh, give him some drug or something, no anesthesia if necessary. They do it in Sweden. They used to do it and even do now. Give him anesthesia and then take the arm and straighten it, and that's that. And then afterwards, he straightened it. You can show him a photograph that it was straight. But when he goes out home, they tell him, now, you wait a few days, the inflammation that we have caused by stretching the arm will go over, then you will feel that you can, and then in a week, it is a little better than before because some of the ligaments were torn. But that arm is an arm which will be weak for life. And it's still now, look what we do. We do that. Instead of moving that thing, we do that. Look, move that, but move the shoulder. Then look, move the shoulder. I don't move the arm. Look, I move the shoulder. I move the arm. I move the shoulder, but the arm is not active. Doing that. Now I do that. If she lied, of course, you would see it easier. That do this, pop, 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 pop. In fact, not the hand at all. Look. Now, incredible thing. The same muscle, doing that himself, he can't do it. But when the shoulder moves, he can. He doesn't even realize that it's painful. Therefore, the brain there does what? Normally, it makes this motionless and moves that. And that's that muscle. And this is painful. But the same muscle working, this being stationary, and that moving, makes no effect, feels no pain, doesn't know even that it's moving. Because it's not associated with the movement. The intentional movement of moving the arm is not there. Therefore, that is associated with pain. Therefore, there is no pain in doing that. No pain. In the hands, in that motor cortex, that muscle can now let go. Because it's not associated with pain and it's moving. It's actually doing it. It's actually going up and down and contracting and decontracting. And contracting and decontracting. And then after you do that with that funny muscle, you take that chap's hand and find this, look, help him, there, and then keep on doing that, and he doesn't realize. And so